When we talk about consistency, most people immediately think about discipline. Waking up early, sticking to the plan, pushing through no matter what. And while discipline is important, it is rarely enough to carry us through the days when everything inside us whispers, quit. The truth is, discipline without meaning feels like a cage. It feels forced, and forced effort never lasts. Think about the moments when you first started something, whether it was a new job, a business idea, a workout routine, or a personal goal. In the beginning, it wasn't discipline that got you moving. It was excitement. It was energy. It was the spark of possibility. You didn't wake up early because you had to. You woke up early because you wanted to. That feeling came from a deeper reason, a purpose that mattered to you. But as time passes, that initial excitement fades. The routine becomes normal, the progress slows, and obstacles start showing up. Suddenly, the thing that once gave you energy now feels like it's draining it. And that's when most people mistake their fading enthusiasm for a lack of discipline. They think they've failed, when in reality, they've simply lost sight of their why. Your why is the emotional anchor behind your actions. It's not about what you do or how you do it, but why you chose to do it in the first place. When you feel like quitting, revisiting that why can reignite a spark that discipline alone never could. It reminds you that what you're working toward is bigger than today's discomfort or frustration. Consider an athlete training for years before stepping onto the world stage. The early mornings, the sore muscles, the endless repetition. If it were only about discipline, no one would endure it. What carries them through is remembering why they started. Maybe it's a promise they made, maybe it's a dream they carry, maybe it's the impact they hope to leave behind. The why makes the sacrifices meaningful. The same applies to us in everyday life. If you're building a business, your why might be to give your family a life of freedom. If you're studying late at night, your why might be to open doors your parents never had. If you're pushing through a fitness journey, your why might be to live long enough to see your children grow. Each of those reasons is far stronger than a calendar reminder or a motivational quote. When consistency feels heavy, it's usually because we've turned the journey into a checklist instead of a mission. A checklist says, I have to do this today. A mission says, I get to do this because it matters. That shift doesn't remove the struggle, but it reframes it. Suddenly, the work is no longer about surviving the day, it's about serving the bigger purpose. And here's the paradox: the people we call disciplined are often not the most disciplined at all. They are the most connected to their why. They're not grinding endlessly out of sheer willpower, they're fueled by meaning, and that fuel makes them appear unstoppable. Every meaningful journey begins with excitement. The early days are full of energy, hope, and fresh momentum. Everything feels possible. You see progress quickly, and the results give you confidence. But then something shifts. The energy slows, the progress plateaus, and suddenly the very thing that once felt inspiring now feels heavy. This stage has a name. It's the dip. The dip is the uncomfortable space between starting and succeeding. It's the moment when the path gets harder, the rewards aren't immediate, and doubt starts to creep in. And it is in this exact space that most people decide to quit. They mistake the dip for a dead end, when in truth, the dip is part of the process. It's not a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're growing. Growth never feels easy while it's happening. Muscles don't grow without strain, skills don't sharpen without practice, and character doesn't strengthen without resistance. The dip is the pressure point that forces us to stretch beyond our comfort zone. Without it, we would remain exactly where we started, full of potential but lacking proof. Think about any skill you've ever learned. Learning to play an instrument begins with excitement. You make quick progress in the first few days, basic notes, simple songs, and you feel unstoppable. But then the complexity kicks in. Suddenly your fingers won't cooperate, your progress stalls, and frustration takes over. That's the dip. And the only way to get to mastery is through it, not around it. The same is true in relationships, careers, and personal goals. There's always a honeymoon stage, a period where everything feels smooth. But that stage eventually gives way to the dip, the grind, the conflict, the obstacles. The dip isn't proof you chose wrong. It's proof that the journey is real, and real journeys always demand persistence. Many people quit in the dip because they mistake difficulty for weakness. They believe if they were truly strong, they wouldn't feel exhausted or doubtful. But that's not how growth works. The dip doesn't expose weakness, it reveals opportunity. It's the moment where your decision to continue matters more than your feelings in the moment. If you look at the people you admire, leaders, creators, innovators, you'll notice something they all share. It's not that they avoided the dip. It's that they endured it. They kept going when others stopped. They understood that the dip is not an obstacle to success, but the gateway to it. Every finish line worth crossing requires surviving the stretch in between. So when you feel like quitting, it doesn't mean you're broken, lazy, or weak. It means you've arrived at the very stage that separates the ones who dream from the ones who do. The dip is natural, and the dip is necessary. When we set a goal, it often feels like staring up at a mountain. The peak looks distant, intimidating, and overwhelming. From the bottom, it's easy to feel like the climb is impossible. That's when doubt starts whispering, "You'll never make it." But the truth is, no one climbs a mountain in one giant leap. Every summit is reached by placing one foot in front of the other again and again. Small wins are those first steps. They may not look impressive, but they carry immense power. Completing a single workout, making one phone call, reading 10 pages of a book. It doesn't seem like much, but each one is a pebble, and over time, those pebbles form the path up the mountain. Progress compounds, and suddenly what once looked impossible begins to feel achievable. The beauty of small wins is that they create momentum. Momentum is different from motivation. Motivation is a feeling. It comes and goes. Momentum is energy in motion. It grows stronger the more you feed it. The smallest action taken consistently is worth more than the biggest dream left undone. One win fuels the next, and before long, you've built a rhythm that carries you forward. Think of how habits are formed. No one wakes up one day and instantly becomes disciplined. Habits begin with tiny decisions repeated over time. Write one sentence today, and tomorrow it becomes a paragraph. Walk for 5 minutes today, and soon it's 30. Save $1 today, and eventually it becomes a savings account. The scale of the action doesn't matter nearly as much as the consistency of it. What often trips us up is the obsession with the end goal. We want the degree, the business, the transformation, and we want it fast. But staring only at the finish line can paralyze us. The goal feels too far, too big, too heavy. Small wins break that weight into manageable pieces. They remind us that success isn't built in a day, but it is built daily. Celebrating small wins also rewires how we see progress. Instead of waiting for the huge breakthrough, we learn to recognize and value each step forward. That shift not only keeps us encouraged, it trains our brain to expect progress, however small. And when your brain believes progress is possible, you're far more likely to keep moving. History is full of great achievements that began with small, consistent steps. Authors who wrote one page at a time. Entrepreneurs who made one sale at a time. Innovators who tested one idea at a time. They didn't leap to success, they inched toward it. What set them apart was not one giant action, but thousands of small, deliberate ones that built unstoppable momentum. So when the mountain looks impossible, shift your focus to the next pebble. Win the day, even in the smallest way. Because small wins don't just add up. They multiply, creating the momentum that makes big victories inevitable. When we hear the word quit, it usually carries a sense of failure. We're taught to believe quitting is weakness, that it means giving up, that it's the opposite of success. But what if quitting isn't always the enemy? What if sometimes quitting is simply the act of letting go of the wrong path so we can keep moving toward the right mission? The truth is, quitting doesn't always mean stopping. It can mean adjusting. It can mean recognizing that the method we chose isn't serving the goal anymore, and instead of stubbornly forcing it, we choose a different approach. That's not failure, it's wisdom. It's the awareness that the mission matters more than the specific route we take to reach it. Think about pioneers, inventors, and entrepreneurs. Their journeys are filled with abandoned strategies, scrapped prototypes, and failed attempts. Did they quit? Yes, countless times. But what they quit was not their mission, it was the approach that wasn't working. Each quit cleared the way for a better idea, a smarter strategy, a more effective step forward. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is quit the version of the plan that no longer fits who you are becoming. A career path, a routine, even a relationship dynamic. Quitting those doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've chosen to preserve your energy for the things that align with your deeper why. Stubbornly holding onto the wrong road can drain you long before you reach the destination. Redefining quitting also changes how we handle setbacks. If you view quitting as failure, every obstacle feels like a threat to your identity. But if you view quitting as refinement, setbacks become feedback. They aren't signs to stop, they're signals to adjust. Each pivot is not the end of the mission, but a smarter continuation of it. Consider the difference between stopping and shifting. Stopping is saying, "I'm done, I can't." Shifting is saying, "This way isn't working, let me try another." The first ends the mission. The second protects it. And it's often the people willing to shift, to quit what no longer works, who ultimately succeed. This perspective gives us freedom. It frees us from the guilt of not getting it perfect the first time. It frees us from comparing our path to others. And most importantly, it frees us to keep pursuing the mission, even if the road looks different than we first imagined. The mission is constant, the methods are flexible. So maybe quitting isn't about walking away. Maybe it's about walking smarter. It's about saying no to what drains us so we can say yes to what drives us. And in that sense, quitting becomes less about failure and more about protecting the mission that truly matters. When we imagine mastery, we often picture brilliance, creativity, or flashes of inspiration. But the reality of mastery looks much less glamorous. It looks like repetition. It looks like showing up day after day to do the same task, the same drill, the same practice. And in the middle of that routine, it often feels boring. But hidden inside that boredom is the birthplace of greatness. The human brain craves novelty. We like excitement, variety, and change. That's why starting something new feels so good. The freshness energizes us. But once the newness wears off, what's left is the grind. The grind is where we repeat the basics, often long after we feel like we've outgrown them. And yet, it's in that grind where true skill is built. Think about world-class musicians. They don't become great by playing concerts every day. They become great by practicing scales, finger exercises, and foundational drills over and over until they can play without thinking. The same is true for athletes who spend countless hours running drills that most people would find tedious. The extraordinary performance is born out of the ordinary practice. Boredom, then, isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's a signal that you're right where you need to be. Because the act of pushing through repetition is what rewires your brain and body to operate at a higher level. Every cycle of practice deepens your ability, even if you don't notice the change in the moment. The challenge is that boredom tricks us into thinking progress has stopped. When the work feels dull, we assume we're stuck. But what's actually happening is that we're laying bricks one after another, building something solid. Each brick by itself doesn't look impressive, but step back after weeks and months, and you see a wall that wasn't there before. Repetition also builds resilience. When you choose to engage fully with the dull parts, you train your mind to focus even when excitement isn't present. That's a powerful skill because success rarely comes in exciting bursts. It comes in steady waves of consistent effort. The ability to keep going when it's boring separates those who dabble from those who master. The irony is that the things that look effortless in others are usually the result of years of repetition they once found boring. A dancer's fluid movement, a surgeon's steady hand, a speaker's calm presence. None of these were born overnight. They were carved into muscle memory through endless cycles of practice, long before anyone was watching. So when the routine feels dull and the repetition feels heavy, it doesn't mean you're going backward. It means you're building something deeper than excitement. You're building mastery, the kind that only comes when you learn to embrace boredom and transform it into growth. We often glorify willpower as the ultimate force behind consistency. The idea that if we just dig deep enough, we can push through anything on our own. But willpower is like a battery. It drains. Some days it's full, but on the days you need it most, it's often empty. That's why relying solely on willpower sets us up for inconsistency. What keeps us steady when willpower runs out is accountability. Accountability is the invisible structure that holds us up when our personal resolve starts to wobble. It's the workout partner who shows up at 6 a.m., making it harder to skip. It's the colleague who checks in on the project deadline, nudging us to keep going. It's the community that sees us, counts on us, and reminds us we're not in this alone. Human beings are wired for connection. For thousands of years, survival depended on the group, not the individual. That wiring hasn't disappeared. When others rely on us, when they believe in us, when they expect us to show up, we're far more likely to follow through. Accountability taps into something deeper than willpower responsibility. Consider a promise made to yourself versus a promise made to someone you care about. Breaking the first one is easy. You'll forgive yourself quickly. Breaking the second one stings because it impacts someone else. That sting is powerful. It pulls us forward on days when our own motivation is missing. Accountability transforms goals from personal desires into shared commitments. This doesn't mean we need an army of people watching our every move. Sometimes accountability is as simple as telling a friend your intention, joining a group of like-minded people, or even sharing your progress publicly. The act of making your effort visible adds weight to your consistency. It shifts your focus from "I have to do this" to "I get to do this and others are counting on me." Community also provides encouragement when our own voice turns negative. Left alone, it's easy to spiral into doubt or self-criticism. Surrounded by others, we borrow belief when we don't have enough of our own. A kind word, a reminder of progress, or even a gentle push can reignite our commitment when our willpower is exhausted. Accountability doesn't make the journey easier, but it makes it harder to walk away. It closes the escape routes we build for ourselves. And strangely, that limitation creates freedom, the freedom to stay consistent without wrestling with constant internal negotiations. Instead of debating whether or not to show up, we simply show up because others are waiting. So while willpower may spark the first step, it's accountability that sustains the journey. When we lean on community, we find strength that no individual reservoir of discipline could ever provide. Most people chase consistency by chasing motivation. They wait for the right mood, the perfect burst of energy, or the spark of inspiration to push them into action. But motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with emotions, circumstances, and even the weather. If consistency depends on motivation, it will always be fragile. What creates lasting consistency is not motivation, but identity. Identity is powerful because it shapes how we see ourselves, and how we see ourselves shapes how we act. When someone identifies as a runner, they don't ask, "Do I feel motivated to run today?" They run because it's who they are. When someone identifies as a leader, they don't wait to feel ready before stepping up. They lead because it's part of their identity. Behavior naturally follows identity. The mistake many of us make is saying, "I want to be consistent." That statement reinforces the idea that consistency is something outside of us, something we're chasing but don't yet have. The shift comes when we say, "I am consistent." The words anchor the behavior inside our identity. They create alignment between who we believe we are and what we actually do. Think of it like casting votes. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. Going to the gym is a vote for being an athlete. Writing daily is a vote for being a writer. Showing up on time is a vote for being dependable. One vote won't define you, but over time, the pile of votes builds a clear identity. Eventually, the identity becomes so strong that the behavior feels natural, not forced. This identity-based approach also changes how we respond to setbacks. If motivation fails, we quit. But if identity anchors us, a setback doesn't break the pattern. It simply becomes an exception. Missing one workout doesn't threaten the identity of someone who sees themselves as consistent. They return the next day because that's who they are, not because they suddenly feel motivated again. Anchoring behavior and identity also removes the endless debates in our heads. When you're motivated, you negotiate less. Should I do this today? Do I feel like it? But when the behavior is tied to identity, there's no negotiation. If you see yourself as consistent, you act consistently, even when you don't feel like it. The decision was made long before the moment of action. It's important to notice that identity doesn't emerge overnight. It's built through repetition. At first, saying, "I am consistent," might feel untrue. But each small action is evidence, and evidence eventually becomes belief. Over time, the gap closes between who you say you are and how you show up. That alignment is where real power lies. So instead of chasing motivation that comes and goes, root yourself in identity that stays. Because once consistency becomes part of who you are, showing up is no longer something you strive for. It's simply what you do. We live in a culture obsessed with perfection. Perfect grades, perfect bodies, perfect careers, perfect outcomes. And because perfection is the standard, anything less can feel like failure. But perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist. What matters far more than doing everything flawlessly is having the courage to keep going, especially when things fall apart. Persistence is the real measure of success. It's not about how perfectly you execute a plan, but about how many times you choose to get back up. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has a long trail of mistakes behind them. The difference is, they didn't stop at the mistake. They treated failure as a step, not a stop. Think about learning to walk as a child. No one does it perfectly the first time. You stumble, you fall, you wobble, and yet you keep getting up. If babies judged themselves by perfection, no one would ever learn to walk. It's the persistence, the willingness to rise one more time, that turns falling into progress. In our own lives, we often underestimate the power of simply showing up. Writing a messy page is better than writing nothing. Running slowly is better than not running at all. Making an imperfect attempt is better than waiting endlessly for the perfect one. Each act of persistence builds momentum, even if it looks. It's about honoring the fact that you kept going when you could have walked away. That shift makes the journey lighter, because you don't have to be perfect to win. You just have to last longer than your doubts. So success at its core is not about never falling. It's about showing up one more time than you feel like quitting. Because the person who persists will always go farther than the person who waits for perfection.